The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Yesterday, I told you the bizarre story of David Eckerts, a New Mexico man who, after being suspected of having drugs inside his body during a traffic stop by New Mexico police, and a canine police officer, a police dog, alerting to potential drugs on him, was forced to have a colonoscopy, multiple enemas, public defecation, fingers in his anus, and any number of other invasive procedures. We thought this is a crazy isolated incident. It turns out we were wrong. At least one other man is now saying that in New Mexico, he was forced to undergo invasive bodily searches for drugs after a traffic stop involving the same police dog and the same hospital. Ross Story is reporting about this. The man says that this is Timothy Young. He was taken to the same Gila Regional Medical Center in Silver City, subjected without his consent to x-rays of his abdominal area and anal exam. Police found no drugs. Young said the search warrant used in this case, exactly the same as in David Eckerts' case, was not valid in the county where the exams were even being conducted. The station reported, a local TV station reported that the canine involved in both cases had been trained as a drug-sniffing dog, but his certification in New Mexico had expired in April of 2011. Doctors involved in both cases are now under investigation by the state licensing board. Police officers will be going before a law enforcement board. And is this a normal thing now? And some people are making a big deal out of the dog. I'm not so sure that it's the dog. I would look at the handler, Lewis. As we know, there's research that indicates that police dogs, drug dogs, will give a positive or a hit based on the handler's expectations, body language, anxiety level, not whether there are actual drugs present. Dogs are sensitive to the mood of the handler. Sometimes, I'm not going to give numbers because they conflict, but not an insignificant number of dog hits on drugs happen when there are actually no drugs. This is just amazing that there are multiple people with bogus, non-valid search warrants, out of county search warrants, being forcibly, anally investigated. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah, I mean, the dog thing, obviously, it goes without saying that this dog should not have been in use. I mean, I don't really know much about certifications and if this dog was deemed incompetent at some point or unable to accurately sniff for drugs, but we know about their effectiveness. This story just keeps getting weirder. I wonder how many instances of this we're going to hear about.
Yeah, how many more are there? And one person emailed me saying this could be a scheme between the police and hospitals to just make tons of money because, as we reported yesterday, David Eckerts was billed for all of these procedures by the hospital after they took place. I don't think so. We don't have any evidence of that. It almost would be more logical. It would be a more logical explanation than the police really thought it was logical to have 3 forced enemas, anal exams with fingers, x-rays, and colonoscopy. It almost makes more sense that it's a scheme to steal money, but we have no evidence of that right now.
Yeah, we really don't know why this would be happening. The money thing seems a bit of a stretch, but I don't know. Maybe it's just cops on a power trip.
We talked earlier this week on Monday about the shooting in Los Angeles International Airport, which was specifically done to target TSA agents by a guy describing himself as a pissed off patriot. We're talking, of course, of Paul Ciancia. And I'm shocked, and at the same time, not that shocked, that this shooting has not been that interesting to most corporate media, and I'm curious about why that is. Now, Media Matters put together an article about this, and their view is that this is a guy who seems to be more or less a right-winger, certainly in line with some of the extremist libertarian, Alex Jones, etc. type rhetoric, and that this is just not that interesting to corporate media, and they may have a point. This was not a random shooting, right? It was specifically a guy who in his manifesto describes himself as a pissed off patriot. He affirms that he made a conscious decision to kill TSA employees. He said he wants to kill TSA and pigs to instill fear in your terrorist mind. He signed his declaration with the letters NWO, apparently referencing the New World Order, which is another conspiracy theory of this kind of a totalitarian one world government conspiracy theory. And his note reportedly referred to Homeland Secretary Chief Janet Napolitano as a bull dyke and contained the phrase "F you, Janet Napolitano." So a, quote, pissed off patriot gets a 223 caliber assault rifle. He gets a duffel bag filled with hundreds of rounds of ammunition, goes to an airport specifically to kill federal government workers, TSA employees, because of their traitorous behavior, and perhaps pigs, right? Local law enforcement officials. And the story is kind of like, yeah, okay, we'll report about it a little bit, but we're not going to go crazy as if this guy were Muslim, right? Can anybody honestly look at the lack of coverage, the lack of interest in this once we found out it was a pissed off patriot angry with the TSA, NWO, calls Janet Napolitano a bull dyke, and say that the coverage would have been the same if this guy were Muslim? There is no way at all, Lewis, that the coverage would have been the same.
You're right. It would be completely different. But there's only one thing I'd add to this, and that's that even we agreed that this man was mentally ill. So, I mean, if it is the case that this was just a mentally ill man, is it worth all that reporting if he was just a sick guy?
Well, but this is the argument you'll hear. This is you're playing devil's advocate, and you're absolutely right to do it, Lewis. And we hear this argument from the right. Well, guys, what do you want? Why are you making it political? It's just a crazy lunatic guy. The same people who are saying that are the ones who, anytime there is any type of violence that isn't obviously a guy who has gone off the deep end of right-wing conspiracy theories, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter if it was mentally ill. We could say, Lewis, anybody who is willing to go into a public place like this and commit a shooting has some degree of mental disturbance. We could agree to that, and we could say there are probably varying degrees, but there's some element of that no matter who it is. Then we should see either consistent coverage or non-coverage of the events, regardless of whether it's a pissed off patriot or a Muslim extremist, regardless of religion, but we don't see that. All else being equal, mental illness being equal, we see drastically different coverage.
Also, we know what's better for ratings, right? This would not nearly be as good for ratings as if it were a Muslim extremist, plain and simple.
Apparently also better for ratings than talking about the success stories under Obamacare is talking about the few people, the statistically few people who will pay higher premiums under Obamacare. WTAE did a story about a woman named Gail Roach who has an incredible Obamacare success story. As a combination of the state exchanges and the federal subsidies available for healthcare, she dropped her premium from $500 a month to under $1 under Obamacare. We barely heard about it, Lewis. Why do you think it is?
Because corporate media doesn't want to cover it.
Fox News is much more interested in focusing on the small percentage of Americans that is going to have either to get a different plan than the one that they had prior to Obamacare or are going to pay more. It's a very small percentage of people. It just doesn't make for an interesting of a story to talk about Gail Roach, who has a huge success here. I don't know why. I think we can probably expect why. Good anecdotes are just anecdotes, whereas bad anecdotes are indicative that the entire Affordable Care Act was a bad idea. You have to believe that logic if you want to explain why we just don't hear about the good anecdotes.
And if you're only watching the types of channels we're talking about, it's almost impossible to hear about the good ones. If
you did hear about this story on Fox News, Lewis, they would probably frame it as healthy people are being unfairly penalized by having to pay more so that Gail Roach can save money on her type 2 diabetes care or something like that. When those stories are covered, they are framed as, well, yeah, I mean, it's a communist socialist thing where it's income redistribution and it's completely evil and socialist. That's the only context among right-wing media where you will hear a positive Obamacare success story.
Oh, right. If this were on Fox News, there'd be a panel of like 5 people all talking about that with regard to this story.
If you are an individual who typically votes for Democrats or typically votes for Republicans, is there one particular issue that could make you switch parties? Let me give you an example. Let's say you're a Democrat, okay? And you agree, given the choice of a Republican and Democratic candidate for Senate. You have the Democratic candidate on which you agree with whom you agree on almost every issue, and you have a Republican candidate with whom you disagree on almost every issue. But there is one issue where you side with the Republican. Is there any specific issue that is so important to you that it would make you vote for the other candidate, so to speak, regardless of all of the political disagreements? So, for example, Lewis, you're a Democrat, but you are a pro-choice. You're a pro-choice Democrat, and the Democrat who's running happens to agree with you on every issue except abortion, where they are anti-choice. And you have a Republican whom you vehemently disagree with on every single political issue, except it happens to be a pro-choice Republican. Is that enough to get you to vote for the Republican over the Democrat? Another example, you are a Democrat, but you're not an anti-Israel freedom flotilla Democrat, right? You agree with Democrats on everything except their ideas on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or at least the specific Democrat where you are voting. Do you vote for the Republican who maybe on that issue has views more in line with yours? And we could say this: gay marriage, student loans, any specific issue that is of importance to you. Would it make you vote for the other party? I'm opening it up. I don't have an answer for this. I'm sure there are people who would say yes, and there are people who would say no. What do you think, Lewis? Do you think that there are a lot of people who are one-issue voters where they would put aside their disagreements on a majority of issues because of agreement on one particular issue?
I think it's rare. I think it's almost impossible that it would ever come to one issue for me. I have to say, I think if there is one issue that it came down to in a presidential election, and I thought the president, the Republican, could actually do something about it, would be that if that Republican wanted to completely change campaign finance reform and things along those lines, that might be the only time. Of course, that would never happen. And
so what you're saying is, if there was someone who, regardless of their beliefs on individual issues, they thought the entire political system was so messed up because of money in politics that they wanted to upend that, that's the one thing you can think of that would get you to throw aside your disagreements on individual issues.
I could throw away just about every other disagreement, and on every other issue there, because I think that's the only thing that's going to fix this country.
Does viability matter? Because you often have outrageous extremists who are completely anti-black, anti-Hispanic, anti-Jewish, anti-gay, anti-everything, but they say our system is corrupt and we've got to change it. But they're never going to win. Would that be enough, or they have to be a viable candidate?
No, this would have to be for the presidential election. They would have to get through the primaries and everything, and they would have to. I would think they would have to actually be able to do something about it, which also, once again, would probably be impossible.
All right, send me your thoughts on this. Could one issue make you vote for the other party, the party you disagree with on almost everything? On today's bonus show, we will talk about a Sweden Democratic leader who was attacked with cake. We will talk about the financial value of a testicle, and a lot more on today's bonus show. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up. Membership is the #1 funding source for this program, and I ask you to consider becoming a supporter today. We'll be back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. If you're worried about liberal bias in statistics, facts, other reality-based things, go to liberalbias.com where you can learn how to unskew reality. It'll be much easier for conservatives to handle. Today's new member of the day is Janice Corbett. Janice, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. People may not realize we're mostly funded by individual members. If you've been listening to this show for a while, if you've been watching for a while, and you get value from what we are doing, please consider becoming a supporter. It really doesn't cost much, and it goes directly towards funding and expanding the show. I think a lot of people don't get, Lewis, how direct the connection is.
It's as direct as it gets. It's like putting the money right into the studios, right into that big TV behind you.
In fact, we actually keep the cash over in a bookcase there. Just literally, it's literally going into the show in that I keep it in a box right over there.
Do you really? That doesn't sound too safe. I suggest you put that somewhere out of reach of thieves.
No, I don't. In fact, it's so hot in the studio, we're having a problem with the heat, that I'd be worried that cash would just spontaneously be set on fire and would start burning because it is so hot in here. But that's kind of a story for another day, maybe for the bonus show. A dad posted a Craigslist ad for someone to rape his daughter. Gawker has a report on this. This is a Missouri man named Anthony Brinkman. He's 32 years old. He's been taken into custody after reportedly posting an ad on Craigslist asking for individuals to beat and rape his 11-year-old daughter. He inadvertently made contact with an undercover police officer posing as someone interested in helping him rape his daughter. The St. Louis County Police Department was made aware of the posting, and they set up a sting of sorts where they reached out to him. He said he was seeking a woman to be his girlfriend and to help him sexually assault his daughter with sex toys. He sent officers photos of his daughter and then agreed to meet the officer at a local Cracker Barrel to seal the deal. That would have tipped me off that I was probably dealing with police, Lewis. I've never met anyone who has even been to a Cracker Barrel. And during the 90s, the company was kind of in trouble for being anti-gay. And if the police are saying, this is what we'll do, we'll get the guy who wants us to rape his daughter to go to Cracker Barrel. I don't know. That sounds weird to me. Anything involving Cracker Barrel is really sketchy.
Yeah. The only reason I can think of that this man would do this, other than for the exact, post he wrote, would be some like Dexter-like situation where he waits for someone to respond to him, meets them and says, "Oh, you want to rape my daughter?" and then kills them or something. But, I doubt that's the case. Say what you want about social media and the internet. I bet you stupid people making posts like this and revealing their intentions online has probably saved thousands of lives. And we've covered many stories on the regular show and bonus show where authorities have been, notified of things like this through stupid posts.
Where is the girl now is what I'm wondering. Is she safe? That should really be the biggest priority. Does she even know what was going on? Police don't suspect that Brinkman abused the girl previously, but they say he may be in possession of child porn. Unclear if it is of his own daughter or not. Absolutely sickening story. I don't know if this story is a Florida story or a Chick-fil-A story, but Raw Story, speaking of stories, Raw Story is reporting that authorities in Florida are searching for a suspect who opened fire with a gun after someone cut in front of him at a Jacksonville, Florida Chick-fil-A drive-thru. According to First Coast News, deputies were called around 9:25 a.m. Monday morning. They found that the victim's car had been struck by bullets, and investigators said that what happened is the victim tried to drive around an old Buick Regal that seemed to be stalled in the drive-thru line. Unclear if the vehicle stalled or had some other kind of technical malfunction. And when they got, they appeared to be stalled. And when they went around, the suspect got out of the side of the car, out of the side door, and started swearing, took out a semi-automatic handgun, fired at least one shot, and then fled on foot. Police are looking for an African-American male about 5'10", 150 pounds. He was wearing a purple jacket and faded blue jeans at the time. Is this a Florida problem or a Chick-fil-A problem or a gun problem? Lewis, you spent a lot of time in Florida. What do you think?
I think we could probably wrap them all together. I mean, Florida has a gun problem. A lot of people in Florida have a fast food problem. And I don't know. Apparently, there are car problems here too in the mix. But this is kind of an American thing. I don't know. The violence in fast food drive-throughs is really just a countrywide epidemic.
So what you're telling me is that the problem of people shooting other people at the drive-thru for anti-gay chicken is a uniquely American problem. That's what you're saying?
I think you'd be hard-pressed to find this problem in another country, yeah.
The only way to stop a bad fast food driver through fast food drive-through customer with a gun is with a good fast food drive-through customer with a gun. That, if nothing else, we've learned.
Oh, David, of course. Everyone at a drive-through, fast food drive-through, needs to be armed because this could happen at any time.
Lewis, if the victim's car had been armed, they could have had a Wild West type shootout right in the middle of the anti-gay chicken drive-through line. And that, of course, would be freedom.
Oh, the ultimate freedom. A shootout, of course, where there are no innocent bystanders.
No, of course not. A Kentucky teen has chosen to sit out a race rather than compete with the number 666 on her bib, which had been randomly assigned to her, because it is, as you know, Lewis, the mark of the beast to many Christians. A Southeast Kentucky teen, according to Raw Story, refused to run in a regional cross-country race after officials declined to give her a different number. Okay, this is Cody Thacker. She said she was assigned bib number 666. Many Christians associate this with the biblical Antichrist or Satan. She said, I just don't believe that 666 should be a number that is anywhere on your body, and I did not want that number associated with me. It made me kind of sick. Christians believe it can be a harbinger of the apocalypse or just a bad thing. There is this, there's actually a name for the extreme fear of the number 666. It's called hexacosiohexacontahexaphobia. I don't know if I got that right. In any case, the craziest part about this is that the race officials actually said her objecting to the number based on religious grounds is legitimate. We didn't issue her a new number because we didn't understand that the objection to 666 was religious. We actually have made other adjustments to uniform code based on religious issues. We just didn't know that that's what the issue was. How far does this go? I don't want to belittle the girl, right? It's not really her fault that she believes she might go to hell if she races with bib number 666. It's probably been taught to her at some point, okay? But how far does this go? If you go to the local Mexican food place, a lot of taco joints, Lewis, when you make an order, they say your order number 242, your order number 450. What if you were order number 666? Do you ask for a different order number? Do you just not pick up the food? Do you leave? Like, how far does this really go?
I don't know. Are phobias by definition irrational? I don't know. This one's pretty odd and pretty rare. But hey, we all have our quirks, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, how far would the race commission go in accommodating people? For example, if you say, listen, this is a purely religious objection. I can't race against Jews or Muslims. Certainly the race commission doesn't just make any accommodation because of racial issues, right? Or what if she says, there was pork served at the tent that, there's going to be pork served at the post-race tent. We can't have that because I won't race if we have that because I'm Jewish and I don't eat pork. I just don't know how far these accommodations are expected to go. And I'm not asking the question rhetorically. I'm curious, how far do they go?
I imagine not very far. It's really up to the people holding the race, and changing the number on a shirt is probably no big deal for them. But I doubt they're going to inconvenience themselves for something like what you mentioned.
All right, we're going to take a break. Yesterday on the show, I misspoke. I know it doesn't happen that often, only about every show. But this one was kind of a funny example, so we're going to play that for you. We're going to talk about Rush Limbaugh. We've got Glenn Beck, self-driving cars, interesting developments with self-driving cars. Of course, your voicemails are coming up. A lot happening on this Thursday show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Yesterday, we were talking about Chris Christie being reelected governor of New Jersey. And at the beginning of that clip, I incorrectly referred to him as being reelected. I said Governor Chris Christie has been reelected mayor. It's funny. There's two things. I'm going to play the little clip for you. A bunch of people let me know, of course. People are very polite in letting me know that I said mayor instead of governor. But also, I called it a hefty win. And some people thought I was making some kind of nuanced joke about Chris Christie's weight. I really was not at all. It just unfortunate timing. Check this out. All right, let's talk about the third race from yesterday's election 2013. Republican Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey, reelected as mayor of New Jersey. Pretty hefty win, 60.5 to... Yeah, so there it is. I know that he was governor and he has been reelected governor, and calling it a hefty win was not at all. I mean, Lewis, it went over both of our heads. Neither one of us noticed what some people thought to be some kind of a joke about his weight, which it wasn't by any means.
That just goes to show how focused we are on the material itself. It's a testament to our work ethic.
So Rush Limbaugh made some comments about women, and this is from yesterday's Rush Limbaugh radio show. I have a lot of things I'm going to want to talk about relating to this clip. Let's listen to it first. And the comment is related to abortion and to women and using techniques that one party is using on the other. Let's take a listen to Rush Limbaugh here.
What would you do out there to counter the war on women meme?
Right.
Number one, I would use all that money that the Republican Party is not spending on qualified candidates to have a ad campaign that counteracts the propaganda on the left. When they say we are against women, we put out that they're against women.
Okay, let's stop it right there. Okay. That is a tactic that is being recommended that is not at all connected to reality. So separate from any actual factual basis about policies relating to women on Democratic or Republican campaigns, elected officials, etc. What the suggestion is here, which Rush Limbaugh loves, is whatever they say about us, we just say about them, regardless of whether it's a reasonable attack, regardless of whether it's a fact-based attack or we can back it up with any actual data. This is the microcosm of what Republicans have been doing for a long time. Oh, Democrats say voter ID is racist. We'll say that not having voter ID is racist because you're saying that whatever, right? This kind of turning around simply for the sake of turning around, which is being presented here with absolutely no hesitation, has kind of been a key part of Republican strategy for a long time now.
Right. It kind of also reminds me of the bullying thing. Like, oh, we're bullying gays. Well, you telling us we can't do that is bullying us, you know?
Another good example. So let's continue with this clip.
Fire with fire and show that they are actually undermining women.
I agree with that. I think that's exactly right. But see, this is what the Republican Party is doing that on any issue. It's not just women. But look at what they're doing. They've destroyed the black family. They're destroying minority families. Look at what they're doing to women with their policies. I mean, they're demeaning them.
Let's stop again. This, again, Rush Limbaugh is an expert at this. We know that it is conservative economic and social policy that has made it so there is almost no upward mobility among people who are born poor, and of course they are disproportionately minorities. We know all of these things, but people like Rush Limbaugh very smoothly turn it around and they say, it's the liberals that have destroyed minority families and black families. It's just amazing how instead of coming up with their own creative but misleading arguments that at least aren't directly tied to things that progressives are pointing out on a regular basis, they're just being lazy and saying, no, you did it, like on a playground sandbox or something like that. And there's a little more here.
They're turning him into nothing but abortion machines. I mean, there's so much that we could be doing. We just fight back. But the Republic...
Democrats are turning women into nothing more than abortion machines. Number one, it's ridiculous. We don't need to address that it's ridiculous at its face. But think about for a second what's implied by Rush Limbaugh's comments. What's implied there is that women are either too weak or too dumb to think for themselves and to make decisions for themselves, which is why, supposedly, Democrats can decide to turn women into abortion machines. Because think about it, Lewis. If Rush Limbaugh believed that women could decide for themselves what they do or don't want to do, what they do or don't want to be, so-called Democrats wouldn't be able to just say, this is what we're going to do to women because they're either too dumb or too weak to prevent us from doing it. We're going to turn them into abortion machines. That's implied in Rush Limbaugh's analysis. And I use the term analysis very loosely, although it's not said.
Right. And if we buy into what he's saying here and hold on to our general beliefs of GOP social policy surrounding women, things are not looking good for women in this country.
No, certainly not. And I just hope when people hear these clips from Rush Limbaugh, they understand the lack of any connection to reality that exists there. Going from Rush Limbaugh to Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck says, we don't need food regulation. We just need honorable companies. I happen to agree with him, but he's missing one part. Take a look at this.
I mean, this whole organic thing is bullcrap because there's no. You can slap organic on anything; it doesn't mean anything. No. So the progressives will say, "I know that's why we need regulation." No, that's why we need to be honorable people. That's why if you really want that, you go and you find somebody that you trust. You go to people. I mean, even if it's Whole Foods, and you have to trust that they're being honorable and they're looking, for the right foods, and they'll tell you what it is. Let the market sort it out.
I agree with him, Lewis, right? We do need honorable companies. It's unfortunate that it's been proven again and again and over again and over again that we don't always have honorable companies. We have companies that in this economic system have both the motive and the resources and the desire to sometimes cut corners or sometimes do things which are not that great for the consumers of their product or service or for those who are environmentally or locationally connected to where their services or products are being produced or rendered, all with the goal of making profit and increasing stock price. So I actually don't even think the FDA does that great of a job, but it is something. Think about without FDA regulation, for example, food standards, etc., you'd have the get-rich-quick types all over the place, not caring about food hygiene, meat from diseased animals, banned pesticides would be used. All of that stuff was done, certainly the banned pesticides until they were banned. We need that type of regulation. It's just a bare minimum. It's not like the FDA even does that much. I agree with Glenn Beck. He's just completely unrealistic in what a solution is.
Yeah, you're not going to get honorable companies without oversight and regulation. It's all about profit. I mean, companies like Monsanto would watch this entire country burn if it meant a few more $1 million in profit. Yeah,
and letting the market sort it out is often what we hear from these types, because no company would ever do anything illegal or underhanded in the pursuit of profit. What world are you living in? Regulated capitalism, right? You can have a food company. It can make as much money as you want it to make or as much money as you're able to make, but you have to play by certain basic rules to be in that business. Insurance, right? Insurance for a long time, get as many customers as you want, grow as much as you want, but you have to play by certain basic rules if you're going to be in the insurance game. This is not anti-capitalist. It is not socialist. It is not communist. You can make as much money as you want, but you've got to play by certain basic rules that are established either for health or for fairness or for other reasons that are there. There is nothing socialist about that.
The countries that have the highest quality of food are the ones, generally speaking, that have the most government oversight. And it's just the way of people. It's human nature.
Broadly speaking, you're 100% right, and I think that's actually a good example to point to. And I couldn't say it any better, so I won't repeat it. Let's take a break. Coming up, self-driving cars, herbal supplements, your voicemails. I know the show might seem like it's almost over, but we've got a lot coming up. And of course, then there's the bonus show, which you can get by becoming a supporter of The David Pakman Show. DavidPakman.com/membership.
The David Pakman Show at DavidPakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We've talked about self-driving cars before on the show, and autonews.com has an article which shows that 9 of 10 licensed drivers would consider buying a self-driving car if it meant paying a lot less for insurance, according to a new survey by the website carinsurance.com. The survey also asked consumers if they would buy a vehicle, automated vehicle, even without insurance savings, and 20% said they would anyway, regardless of an insurance discount. This is pretty interesting to me because, as we know, it appears that self-driving cars and kind of controlled driving of cars, where maybe it's a manual drive car, but when you get on the highway, an automated system takes over, keeps the cars safely spaced, prevents accidents, etc. This has to be something that's coming up, Lewis. Statistically speaking, driving is a very dangerous activity, and it's hard to imagine that as lifespans continue to expand, medical advances continue, relative to that, driving a car the way we do it now is going to seem disproportionately even more dangerous.
Right. I think they're coming, and I think they're coming soon. I'm still uneasy about getting into one, but it is the future.
It's going to be a long time, I think, before we have a totally automated car system. We're going to see individual computer-controlled cars start to enter the marketplace. There was one comment on a website that kind of made me think twice, which is like an anti-self-driving car argument based on freedom. And it said, am I the only one who sees this as the end of personal freedom as we've known it? It's a very short jump from autonomous cars controlled by computer to autonomous cars whose speed and destinations are controlled by the government. Have we become so lazy and self-absorbed that we don't want control over our own destinies? Is it more important to text, talk, or read than to experience freedom on the road? The majority won't tolerate it, and at that point we could legitimately prove to be a hazard to the computer-controlled vehicles. So, what do you think about this anti-freedom argument? I think that for people who still want to drive from a recreational standpoint, you're still going to be able to. There will be many opportunities to do that. We're talking about drastic reductions in the number of people killed in car accidents, which is just an astronomical figure.
Yeah, and I think, who knows, maybe we'll get to the point where there are many, many restrictions on driving your own vehicle. But you know, in terms of the government controlling speeds and destinations, I mean, this could be the type of thing that, once again, we fall way behind on when it comes to legislation, and I hope that's not the case.
I hope we don't fall as far behind on cars as we have on trains, because that would really be just embarrassing and pathetic. Let's talk about herbal supplements. The New York Times has a piece which says that herbal supplements are often just powdered rice and powdered weeds. DNA tests show that many pills labeled as healing herbs are little more than powdered rice and weeds. Using a test called DNA barcoding, they have been able to uncover fraud in the commercial seafood industry. We've talked, Lewis, about counterfeit fish. And Canadian researchers tested 44 bottles of popular supplements sold by 12 companies. They found many of them were not what they said. The pills were labeled as herbs. They were often diluted herbs or herbs replaced entirely by fillers like soybean, wheat, and rice. Consumer advocates say that there is more and more evidence that the herbal supplement industry is riddled with questionable practices. And I have to tell you, Lewis, I am not at all surprised. By definition, it is a somewhat questionable industry, often making claims that they tell you have not been confirmed by the FDA or other organizations. But even that, you would assume, okay, the health benefits may not have been confirmed, but at least I assume I'm getting in the bottle what I'm told is in the bottle. Even that, apparently, we can't be sure of.
Yeah, it's sad. And these scientists need to come out, and they need to oust these companies. People need to know. If they're worried about legal repercussions, I don't think they need to. I think the publicity surrounding this would protect them, basically, when it comes to legal representation. And who knows, there could be a case for a massive class action lawsuit here.
Of the 44 supplements that were tested, 1/3 of them showed outright substitution, meaning there was no trace at all in the bottle of what was advertised on the outside of the bottle. That is just amazing. It's a 1 in 3 shot that you're getting 0 of what you think you're buying. It's kind of important, I think, to single out companies. As Lewis said, they have not been singled out by this study, in part maybe because they don't have a large enough legal budget. Even if ultimately they would be vindicated, you still have to initially pony up for representation, although maybe somebody would take the case pro bono. I think that it is important to single out these companies because when you have unregulated claims, an unregulated market, statements not evaluated by the FDA, you need to shame the companies that are doing this to prevent people from buying their stuff.
Yeah, this is completely unacceptable. I hope that we do learn who's responsible for this.
Let's go to your voicemails. I have a voicemail today from the Eggman. Our voicemail line is 219-2-DAVID-P. The Eggman has been tweeting, emailing, and leaving voicemails about when we did the story of the Marine who was beaten up for defending his gay friends, and it is being called a hate crime. Eggman seems to be upset about hate crimes, and this is the example he posed. Let's listen to Eggman.
Yo, brother. Okay, I'm the Eggman. I'm driving my car down the road, and I see a homosexual man on the side of the road, and I do not like him. So I get out of my car, I beat him up, I mean really bad, like in the head, concuss the guy. Painful. He passes out. Get back in my car, start driving. Somebody cuts me off really bad. Then I get out of my car at the light, and that guy who cut me off, I beat the shit to him just as bad. Man, head kicks, punches, concuss the guy, he's up, he passes out.
Yep.
Then they catch the Eggman 10 miles down the road. I beat up a gay dude, and I beat up a poor driver dude. Which one should get me more time in prison? Now, keep in mind, both have the same injuries. They're both going to be for life. They both have pain forever. How come if I beat up some guy who cut me off, it's not as hateful as if I beat up some guy who's on the side of the road who just looks different?
Right.
I think they're both horrible crimes, Dave, and that's what I'm trying to explain to you. No matter what your motive is for beating somebody physically really bad, it's hateful. You're a piece of and you should be in prison. I don't give a if somebody cut you off. I don't give a if somebody did nothing to you and they just look different. You're still a horrible person and belong in prison. And the guy that beat you up for cutting him off is no less culpable than the guy who beat somebody up for just being gay or being black or being Jewish or having bad hair or a big nose or whatever. You got me, dude? Come on, man. Violence is horrible.
Okay, so here's the thing. The Eggman is missing something. There is nobody saying that the injuries sustained would be worse or that the crime in itself is worse physically if it is motivated by someone cutting you off or motivated because someone is gay. The point of hate crime legislation is to make it abundantly clear that aside from all the things that are already against the law, breaking laws with a motivating factor being that someone belongs to a particular group, class, race, sexual orientation, etc., social class, whatever the case may be, those are particularly antisocial behaviors to take that as the reason to commit a crime, and they are particularly necessary to show that it will not be tolerated. And people will say, but it's already a crime to beat people up. We don't need hate crime legislation. You often hear that. And that completely misses the point. Because if someone cut you off, you're absolutely right that it is still a crime to get out of your car and to beat them up. But that is not a very specific antisocial, depraved behavior above and beyond the fact that they cut you off. Whereas targeting someone solely for their membership in a particular race, class, creed, whatever the case may be, is a particularly heinous type of crime that represents a certain depravity, Lewis, that needs to be specifically targeted.
Perhaps. At the same time, what we're talking about here is harsher penalties, harsher sentences. And I think that normal assault and battery sentences just need to be harsher to meet those that we're talking about here. I think that would please Eggman. I think that would please me. I don't necessarily think that we do need that designation if normal assault and battery were considered just as heinous.
All right, Lewis disagrees with me on this. What do you think? Write in. I think there is a very specific point to hate crime designations. I think we need them. I think they are valuable. Send me your thoughts. We can follow up on this one. That's it for today, but the bonus show continues. davidpakman.com/membership.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.